I guess, you know what? I thought I grew up in the 60s, right? I was born in 62. So I'm 62. Oh my God. This is like lottery ticket day. Yeah, just realized 62, 62. Anyway, so I grew up in the 60s. I'm a Johorian, true and true. So my mother was born in Muar. My father was born in JB but moved to Pahang, to Pekan, with his family. It can be more different. My mom is Chinese, from a middle class family. My father is Malay. My grandfather was an ustaz who taught, Gamma classes in Pekan and Pahang, right? But and they met, my mother and my father in Muar, right? So my father was the oldest son of 14 brothers and sisters, but the fifth in the family. And even though he was born in JB and the whole family moved to Pekan, he wanted to go back to JB to learn English, because at that time, I think there were very few schools that taught English. And so my grandfather and my father walked. This is the story. That's what we were told. Walked for a while on the road back from the one road back from Pekan to JB, and like hitched a ride on a lorry and and all this stuff. So it took about 2 weeks to get to JB, but he took him to the one school in Johor, in JB, that taught English. So he left him there, my grandfather. So he grew up there. He became a civil servant, and was, as my mother would love to proudly say, was a Division 1 officer who worked for customs and was sent a lot to Muar. So one day, and this is the story, again, depending on who you speak to, he was at the rest house, the old rest house, and saw my mother, because my mother's house, my grandparents' house on my mother's side, was next to the old rest house, and he saw my mother and he fell in love. Anyway, so, being courted in the 60s and marrying in the 60s wasn't so common, right? So there's this Malay poor boy who did well, and this Chinese young woman who comes from this middle class family, who meet and fall in love. And my grandfather said, no, you cannot marry a Malay man. And my mother said, I want to, because I think he's a good man. My grandfather's like, no. And my mother said, okay then, and she packed her bag and left the house. So I think that's sort of one of the traits that I think my sisters and I inherited, my brother and I inherited, that this is the path, this is what I think is right, and I don't care what you think. I love you, Father, but and left, and to go marry my father. Anyway, a year later, I was born. So I'm the oldest of 7. How many no, I'm the oldest of lots of grandchildren on my mother's side. So my mother came from a family of 7 brothers and sisters. And grew up thinking the world was wonderful, right? So my family, my grandparents on my father's side, I think, loved the fact that my mother was Chinese because she was very putih, right? So that, it's your traditional cliche, like, oh my God, she's putih, so she's fine. Teach her how to speak Malay, make sure the children speak Malay, which I didn't, because my mother taught me Chinese. So I spoke Chinese and English a lot till I was 4. Then my grandmother on my father's side put her foot down and said she has to learn Malay. I will tell you, my Malay is still not very good. Well, and the fact is, like, in my family, and I come like from a family where there's 4 of us, and I'm the oldest girl, so there's 3 girls, and the youngest is a boy, where we spoke only English, because my parents, I know it's noisy because their kids upstairs, right? So there's 4 of us. We spoke English in the house because my parents spoke English. My mother's Malay was atrocious. My father had non-existent Chinese discourse, so that was how it was. So we grew up in JB for a while. My father moved to Malacca for 2 years, 3 years, and then moved back to JB for a year, and then moved to Klang. So I was in Klang. I'm a convent girl, always been a convent girl from primary school. then moved from Klang to PJ to attend another convent school. So I'm a Centurion through and through, except for 2 years when I went to Tunkukusha. I didn't fit in. I'm not very Tunkukusha-like. Although some of the values, I must say, about family and loyalty and stuff, I did learn in Tunkukusha as well, but I also learned it in a center, right? So all girls school, all girls boarding school, you tend to stick together. Some of my closest friends are from high school. And some of my closest friends are from primary school. And even though, there's that distance where all of us go our separate ways, we all know our Sunta songs. We know what happens when we're all sister and as girls, right? So and we're very close. So I get little goosebumps just thinking about how I grew up. I had a great childhood. I read a lot. Have always been a bit different, simply because I think I was hyperactive. So I had a hyperactive imagination doing a million and one things. I always got into trouble with my mother, who couldn't handle me and was a handful. I am your cliche girl, grows up with this crazy imagination who one week decides she's an acrobat and then like tumbles, on the sofa in the living room, hits the side of the table and just like damages her voice box, and then has to go for stitches. And then the next week, I'm off being a lion tamer in the circus, and I'm like, taking out my mother's and my father's belts in their cupboards and doing all that stuff. And another week I'm a scientist and I cut off all my mother's prize roses to boil them because I think that's the way to get dye. And then of course, my mother is your traditional Chinese mother with the rotan, yeah. So I would run around the house, and my mother is like 100-meter dash champion runner, yeah, in school. And Hartini Zainudin, which is till now does not like to be called Hartini Zainudin because my full name means I'm in trouble. So my mother used to scream that name. I could run faster than her because the rotan would determine how fast and how quick I should move, right? And every time I got hold of that rotan, the one rotan, I didn't realize my mother had others hiding in other places. So I would make it a mission every month or so to find where she put all the rotans so that I would take it and throw it out in the bonfire. When you cut your grass, you throw them out. Yeah, I would throw them out. And the more I threw them out, the more rotans there were, and the more trouble I'd get into. Anyway, I have a avid fear of rotans. I don't like it. It was very much a part of my life because, like I said, I got into trouble every day. I had this wild imagination. I would do crazy things. I tried to burn the house down because I was a chef. I was a chef. I was trying to cook. So that's my life. But it was a wonderful, wonderful childhood filled with books and imagination. As much as I got into trouble, my parents didn't discourage me from sitting in front of sitting in front of your homework or doing your homework all the time, although she was very strict with me only. My other two sisters and my brother are exemplary students. Anyway, that's my childhood. Finished school and then went off to America. Spent 20 years in America. I went to Columbia. Okay, and that's enough said, given what's happening now. I am from one of the most liberal universities in the world, where I was taught to speak up. And the first thing I learned, I remember in my first doctoral class at Columbia, at Teachers College, I said I wanted to be a teacher, was that there is always a juxtaposition. This is my first class, yeah. There is always a juxtaposition between policy and what happens on the ground. That is my first lesson in education. And that lesson, that statement, has stayed true till now doing the nonprofit work. So my father is Kelantanese on his father's side, and from Pahang from my mother's side. So the story at Mat Kilau is, so Mat Kilau's father, Tok Gajah, has 3 sons, right? So my great grandfather is the number two son. So Mat Kilau is the youngest of the first. I don't know, one of them. So one of them is my uncle. So Mat Kilau is my great 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 granduncle. So that's my great great grandfather on my mother's side is the Capitan of Moi. So every year, my uncle has to do the parade because there's Teochew, right? So my mother is Teochew. So he has to, because he's the head of the Teochew clan in Moi, do all this whole thing every year in Moi. Oh my God. You know, the thing is with saying about what happened in the past and what happening now is people think that we're romanticizing a lot of what happened in the past and that, we tend to gloss over so many ugly things. The truth of the matter is it was the best time growing up in the 60s and 70s. We went to each other's houses. We rang each other's doorbells. I rode bicycles. We catched tadpoles, but I call them guppies. They were really tadpoles in drains. Everything was safe. We biked for hours. We talked to each other. There was hardly any TV. We went to each other's house. We ate each other's food. It was really, really nice growing up. Yeah. I mean, we went camping in the Beluga. And we didn't, I don't know, but I don't remember snakes, right? That there were no strangers waiting to, prey on us or anything. It was just wholesome, wonderful, amazing, incredible, um, an incredible childhood. It was exactly like in the books. My father told us from very young, and the girls, yeah, that you can be whatever you want. We were never held back. And when, I went to college, and this is the honest truth, he says, if anyone tries to pressure you to do anything you don't want to do, and he meant religiously, culturally, and stuff, you tell them, your father says no. You do what you do what I tell you to do, because there is a bigger sin to go against your father than it is to listen to all these people who don't know anything. So that was what he taught me, right? And we've learned that lesson till now, yeah, even with my kids. And, my mother says, okay, you've gone a bit overboard and very, very American, because I lived in America for 20 years and you brought your kids up, very Western. And, my kids come from very non-traditional, I don't know, non whatever background, because all my kids are adopted and I'm a single mom, and I got married, I got divorced, and then I decided to have kids, and they're not even biologically mine, but they're mine. Yeah. And we have this understanding, and my kids asserted themselves from very young, where now they tell me what to do, right? Or we argue. The universe also, and the world has a way of, I think, in my experience, giving me what I needed, and blessing me with what I needed and what I want to fulfill whatever dreams and aspirations my father wanted. And I'll give you an example. My father, because I wanted to be a teacher since I was 6 years old, I went to college, I went to university wanting to be a teacher. I went to teachers college, right, at Columbia. But I never taught, and I never went to university. I mean, I never taught in university. And his dying wish, because he got very sick, was, why can't you just be a lecturer and go work in a university and be, traditional? And I said, no. And he was the first person I said, I want to work in Chow Kit and I want to work with children. And he says, how are you going to live, right? And I said, you know what, I will live on blessings. And I was not being flippant. I was serious. I said, I am just going to leave it up to God or the universe or whatever, because I'm not religious, not at all, but I am spiritual. And I believe that, and said, and God will provide. And my father said, what? Blessings? You cannot eat blessings. And I said, I will make do. It will be. And that was 2005, yeah? So it's 1969. I'm 7 years old. I remember playing in the drain, right? Because I like to look for jade, it's moss in the drain. And I remember things were happening in KL. And the kaka, right? So the kaka who takes care of me came in because I was playing in the drain, and she pulled me out. And she said, you need to go in, this curfew. And I was like, I'm in Klang. And I remember there was no school, which I was really happy. And then I can't remember how many days it was. And then we went back to school. And it was the first time I felt that rift between the race. And we were in Standard 1, yeah. And one of my Malay friends sat next to me and showed me this. It wasn't a parang, but it was definitely a knife that she kept in her in a school bag. I remember this, right? And I said, why are you bringing a knife to school? And she said, because you never know, if the Chinese attack us, then I can fend for myself. And I went, I'm like, and I remember saying this, I'm like, I'm half Chinese. Are you going to cut me in half? And that was the first time that I realized race and identity, that there was this rift because of May of 69. And because it's May 13th, so it's like 12 days before my birthday. I thought, my God, you just spoiled my birthday, right? But that was the first time. And then I went to America, and then I stayed till 2000, so 1982. And then and then I came back in 2001, 3 months before September 11th. So I lived in New York and was partying with my friends in New York, and like dancing on tables. And I did the whole Hampton scene, right? Because we were in the Hamptons every summer with my friends. Um, and I never mixed around with Malaysians. Even in university, I didn't. Um, and I think, I moved to New York when I finished my master's, and I was actually in DeKalb, Illinois before that. So I hung around with the Malaysian crowd. I actually got married I forgot that part. I got married. I went out with someone, a Malaysian, for 6 years when we were in university. And then I got a scholarship to do my doctorate, and he came home to Malaysia, but we got married. But then 5 days after we got married, my befriending, I went back. I moved to New York. And then when I arrived in New York, that was really terrible. I decided I didn't want to be married anymore. I just like, I'm 24. And it's not his fault. Oh my God, it's going to be documented. Okay, I'll tell you, the first thing I did that was very American was watch a basketball game, which I've heard about, but I never saw. So it was fascinating watching a basketball game.
First time overseas.
Yeah, my first time overseas, I go into the dorm, like the next door dorm, and it's all boys. And then the boys are watching a basketball game, right? And I'm watching and I'm fascinated because I've never watched basketball. I think that was first. Then someone explained to me how it worked. And then
It was exciting. How did
it was so exciting.
leaving home?
No, wait. No. It wasn't basketball, it was football. It was football. So I learned American football first. So I literally was so fascinated. I sat down and learned how it worked, right? First, anyway, all that stuff. So I learned that. I was exciting. Oh my God, my parents sent me off to the airport. I was literally flying out the door. You have to remember that I was come from this family that, yes, was open-minded and stuff, but my mother was very strict with me, right? So I got overtime all the time. So I think I flew out that door, going to America, right? And then you're an international student. You go for your international orientation. You do all these things. You have a foster family, right? That's someone who welcomes you. All you see is cornfields, which I thought was amazing because I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the Midwest. This is amazing. I see the corn. Then I see my first football game. Then I see all these things, and I'm like, what's this? What's this? I'm like a kid in a candy store, right? So that's all wonderful and good. I learned how to drink my first beer. Okay, there, I said it. I loved and realized that I really liked alcohol. No, I shouldn't say that, but yes, it was. You can edit it. It doesn't matter. So I learned how to drink beer, which was the first for me. Alcohol, maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. It's up to you. Do whatever. So I learned to drink beer, and I learned to drink beer through a straw. So it was the first time I got drunk there. So it was just fun. I met, I worked part-time, right? Because you could work, but not like out in the open. So I worked in a Thai restaurant and made friends with the dishwashers who couldn't speak English. So one of the first few things that I did was teach English on the side. I worked in the cafeteria, the school cafeteria, so you had to wear those plastic bags, and clean all the tables. I did that. Um, Yeah, I met my boyfriend husband there, who's Malaysian, and I just fell in love with everything about. And he's an MC Kekeboya who could quote Shakespeare. So I mean, he could quote Shakespeare. He was like really smart, and yeah. So we sort of hit it off. You're 18, 19. You sit around, you think you're cool as shit. Um, you quote Shakespeare and smoke cigarettes and drink beer, right? And then, of course, what do? You drink Amstel Light and Corona beer with like lemon slices, and you smoke cigarettes, Marlboro Lights, and you sit with this boyfriend who becomes your boyfriend for 6 years, and you think this is your world, right? You take the car on, and I was with my friends this past weekend, my college friends from DeKalb, Illinois, from NIU, because one of my friends got married, and we were talking about how we would take car trips from DeKalb to Chicago, which is 60 miles west of Chicago, during the winter, and you turn up the heater and scrape the snow off the ground and have 6 foot snow drifts, and tell Hantu in the middle of the night. We're homesick. It was so much fun, and we bonded, right? We bonded over the. But when they left and got their masters, and I was there because I got a scholarship to do my doctorate, I was lonely, and I knew that there was um a world bigger than DeKalb, Illinois, which is why I applied to Columbia. Um, so I wanted to push the boundary to see how far I could go, to see if I was good enough to get into an Ivy League school, etc. I actually did my homework at the library to see which was the best educational school because I wanted to be the best teacher. No, most of them were doing computer science and business and finance. I think I was the only one who was doing English education and English lit. So my bachelor's is in English lit in Shakespeare, and my master's is in Master of Science in Education. So I'm an English ed people. My doctorate, which I started and didn't finish, was a doctorate in education. Well, not immediately, not like 24 hours. I got on the plane and then I said I didn't want to get married. Yeah, I just went to New York and there's this whole world, right? You go to Columbia, you're walking down these halls, you go and you meet people, and I didn't know it. His parents were there, right? So his father was the ambassador to the UN, to United Nations. And I lived with them for a little while till I found my own apartment on the same street. But I didn't know anyone, and I wanted to know people. And then it turned out my sister's friend, who was Malaysian, was there, who I met. That one Malaysian friend who was not very Malaysian because she lived in London, E2, and we met so many people. I keep saying I'm 24. I'm 24. I had gone from living with my parents, who were wonderful but sheltered and strict, whatever, to a boyfriend, Malaysian, to New York, where I was like, no, I don't want to be married. So I came back the following year during the summer and said to him, I don't want to be married. And he was not happy. So it took me another 2.5 years to get divorced. Anyway, he's very, very happy now. Yeah. So he's remarried. He's got 6 kids. He's doing wonderfully. 5 kids, 6 kids. And he's fine. And my ex-father-in-law was very mad at me. He's not mad at me anymore. And he became the chairman for Yayasan Chow Kit. I'm 20-something years old. Of course it's fun. There's the dating scene, there's the reading scene, there's the movie scene, there's the everything scene, there's the study scene. I used to I used to go to Columbia. So Teachers College is on 120th Street and like Broadway, between Broadway and Amsterdam, uptown. I live midtown on the east side. I would go for curry because I would miss my Malaysian food, but it wasn't really Malaysian, it was Indian. I go for my curry in a hurry down on 21st Street. Like, so I literally go all the way down, get my food, and then go all the way back up and stuff. Then my sister decided to come and visit me, right? My younger sister. And she lives in London. She comes to visit me. So I have to plan the whole itinerary of where we're going. and we go out, right? So I plan the clubs we go for dinner, we do. And we're talking about 1990, yeah? 1989, 1990. So much fun. We're young. So, there's all the clubs, there's all the stuff. We made friends. I made friends with the doorman. Don't forget, I know how to drink now. It was fun. It was so much fun. It was wild. It was crazy. I danced on tabletops. Never mind my sister. I'll just talk about myself. I made friends with. I had so much fun. So much fun. And then, it was not so fun. Then it was you meet someone, you get into a relationship with someone, you break up with someone, you're heartbroken, and I'm like, okay, now what to do? I didn't like my dissertation. I didn't like teaching. So my teaching ed classes, when I taught in Washington Heights, etc., you meet the kids and you're teaching Shakespeare. And the kids are poor and they're hungry and they're sleeping at the classrooms. And I said, you know what? This isn't for me. I changed my dissertation 3 times. I took forever to finish my doctorate. I started as a volunteer working for a not-for-profit organization called Public Color. It's one word, one seat. It's an after-school arts educational program. It worked in those poorest schools in and around the 5 boroughs of New York. So I worked in Bed-Stuy, I worked at Ocean Hill, Brownsville. I worked in Newark, New Jersey. I worked in the Bronx. I worked at Hunts Point. I worked in the poorest areas where all the shooting was going on, where the kids were in gangs. So the Bloods and the Crips and all this stuff. I worked there. I've done that work. And then I fall in love, and then it doesn't work out. And then my heart is broken. At the same time, school isn't going well. I don't like anything I'm doing. I don't like, sitting down and doing my dissertation. I couldn't come up with a dissertation. I was completely dispirited. Someone told me, recommended that I go work for this new program. It wasn't even a nonprofit, it was a program at the time, of this lady who worked in a school in Harlem, in East Harlem on the Upper East Side. I went to see her. She was wearing designer clothes. I was wearing designer clothes. We hit it off. She lived on the 91st Street and Park Avenue. I lived on 57th Street. And she's this amazing, wonderful woman, and who took me under her wings, who is one of the best fundraisers in New York, comes from a very, very wealthy family, but who has the heart of whatever. So yeah, she sort of helped pick me up, told me to dust off and start doing things. And she's the one who taught me with privilege comes responsibility. And it's not in the traditional sense that you think with privilege comes responsibility. Her idea of privilege comes with responsibility is that it is a privilege to go into people's homes and see how they live and how they work and what they think. And with that comes the responsibility of taking care and protecting what they were. That is what with privilege and responsibility comes. So that's what I learned from her. But I learned to fundraise from her. I learned a lot of things. And we're in touch till now. Well, I had to get up, right? Because I couldn't lie down and think my life was over. And I think it's karma, right? Because I was so terrible to my ex-husband. Then so this comes around, right? Yeah. One of my big turning points. Yeah, and there's been other turning points along the way as well. But yeah, I finished my PhD much, much later. It took me 11 years. I was able to stuff, when you do your doctorate, you have 5 years. And when you do finish the 5 years, you have to renew, yeah. You have to, this thing up. Yeah, I had to do that and finish my dissertation. Yeah. My father got sick. And I think my father was sick and I was in New York. And and I had been away from home for 6 years, and I hadn't been home in 6 years. And my father was sick, and I said, okay, I'm going to go back to see and to take a break as well. And then September 11th happened. So I came back July 21st, 2001. September 11th happened, and I didn't go back. And then my father got sicker and sicker. So that was another turning point. The decision not to go back, and never went back. I was supposed to go back, and then I didn't. And then I came here to volunteer. So I said I need to volunteer. And then they sent me to Chow Kit because I worked in Hunts Point and stuff. And met the kids and thought, what? So I was a volunteer at Yayasan Chow Kit, Malaysia. And so they were like, oh, what are we going to do with this girl, right? So American. So they sent me to Chow Kit. And so I remember the volunteer bringing me to Chow Kit to see the place, which is behind here. And I saw like 40 kids or 30 kids, whatever it was, who had nothing to do. Nothing to do. The computers were broken. The ice box had nothing. There was no snacks. I couldn't speak Malay very well. I couldn't speak Malay. I hadn't spoken Malay in 20 years. And thought, what the hell on earth? And it was worse than what I saw in Hunts Point and the Bronx. It was worse because nobody cared. And then I went back and complained to the chairman of Yayasan Salam, who happened to be my ex-father-in-law, right? And said, you need to see what's happening in Malaysia. I thought Malaysia didn't have poor people. I thought Malaysia, you took care of children. He's like, of course we do. I said, no, you don't. And I said, you need to follow me. He said, I give you 20 minutes. I said, okay. He said 2.5 hours. I said, what is this? He said, all right, Teeny, what do you want to do? And I said, we need to improve this. And of course, I had this experience in school and I had worked in a nonprofit and I knew the same kind of kids. It was simple, just start making phone calls, asking for food, getting people horrified. Kids were sleeping in like those metal hawker stall that they eat at night. We were great. The family that was volunteering in this daycare center were at night picking up kids to make sure they had showers or could sleep in beds, or not even beds, on the floor at home. And so I said to them, what would you like me to do, right? They said, we would like a bigger space for children to take showers and have food. So I thought I was just going to help them do that and go back to New York. And then you see this discrimination. And then you see this discrimination against you, against me. They were like, what did the JKM officer? I remember meeting the JKM officer the first time, and she said, Doktor, kebudayaan Melayu dengan kebudayaan orang Amerika lain ya. I said, saya bukan orang Amerika, right? And at that time I can speak Malay a bit, but I remember, right? I said, saya orang Malaysia ya. And I know because I had blonde streaks in my hair or something. I don't know. And she was screaming at the kids and the families because I had filed a complaint, right? She came in like waltzing in and said, who complained about there's no food? I said, there's no food. Now, of course, and I am not going to kowtow to you because you yell at me, number one. Number two, I am very Americanized. I'm like, I'm not scared of you. Who are you? Right? So, yeah. So JKM and I didn't hit it off, although JKM is now our partner. That was part of the reason. Part of the other reason was because they started even before we moved to this place, leaving children. And the first few kids I had in my apartment personally were 4 kids from one family and a baby. And the baby is now my son, who's now going to be 19. And then it changed and my whole demeanor changed. So quit smoking. I quit. Well, no, I didn't quit drinking, but I definitely quit smoking, quit partying. I quit being so self-destructive, I think, in many ways, and just calm down. And I have to tell you, working in Chow Kit and adopting children was the most grounding thing I've ever done in my life. I think I quit smoking because I had children. I calmed down in terms of just me partying and stuff and all that, changed my demeanor. Definitely when my father died in 2005. But that was also the time when I decided I was going to open this place, right? So it took me 2005, 2006, we saw the minister, April 1st. 2007, 1st of April, we opened this place. Exactly. So, yeah, it was 1 year. I remember 3 weeks before we signed the contract for this place, I didn't have the money to pay for the deposit for this place. I was crying on the side of the road. And I said, I don't have the 60,000 to pay the 1 year's rent. I was just crying and crying and crying. And I said, the children, right? Because I had these 40 kids in the other place. And my friends banded together. And one of my friends owned one of the bars on Heritage Row, where the Sheraton Hotel is, and said, you can have a concert here. Can I tell you, that was one of the most, there was no sun then, right? This was just opening thing. I didn't have the money. And and I had promised that it was 1 year. And Tiara Jacqueline came, Islin Ramlee came, who's now the head of Maybank. And they're all singers. Yeah, these are just friends. Just people came together who told other people to help me raise this money. So we had a little concert. And I had sponsors, right? So my friends would tell me, like, go to Mas. And so Mas, the captain at that time, managed to get me 2 business class tickets to London, which I raffled, which Tiara bought. Um, um, and so people just brought stuff in, right? Free things and stuff. And we raised the entire amount that night. So I paid the deposit 3 weeks later. This place was dark. There was no electricity. So like the guy, the couple who was volunteering at the other place just told me about the place because they all live in the neighborhood. So he had a torchlight, not a torchlight, his phone. And we came out here in the dark, like it was dusty and stuff. And just using my imagination to try to figure out how to do. So this place where we're sitting at, the toy library, right, is the first place that was sponsored. And the person who sponsored it was Tan Sri Mustafa Kamal, who passed away, right? So MK Land. And the reason how I did it was one day prior to this, when we were in the old center, people were donating food, right? Because I told you made phone calls and people told people to bring food. And at that time, the place was so small, we couldn't fit all the kids in. So the kids would have to sit on the street, yeah, on Lorong Haji Taib Tiga. So, and they would get bitten by the red ants. And that's how it worked, right? And then it's all word of mouth. Jacket, PAKK, it's all word of mouth. Yeah, we don't advertise. And don't forget, JKM and I didn't get along. So, it took a while to get this place up. And so one day, when I was there, was the day the mother handed me the baby, right? So Zayed, my son, and said, I cannot take care of him anymore. He was 11 months old. So I have this baby, I'm crying, she's left. She's left. And I'm holding this crying baby. And this woman, young lady, walks in. It was Sanji Mustafa's daughter. And I'm like, what the hell do I do? This baby's crying. She said, what happened? I said, the mother just left the baby and she's gone. And so she started crying and she gave the food and she went back and she told her father. So the father came to see me and said, who's the one who made my daughter cry? And then he said, where's the baby? And the baby was now 11 months, trying to walk, right? He was walking. And he summoned JKM and said, you can't even do your work. You all should be ashamed. Scolded them and then donated this place. My first baby trafficking case, that was the case with the baby being left, was my son. That was the first baby that was left here. The baby selling cases were hard. People selling children were hard. So, this is again 2007. There is no anti-trafficking law. So that anti-trafficking law was introduced in November 2007, but was implemented 2008. People were selling children left, right, and center. People were selling babies for 2 sticks of shabu, which was 20 ringgit. I mean, you see and you hear, there were streetwalkers lining down here. There was a raid, of streetwalkers and kids and young women that were brought in from Dengkil into these places for prostitution. The youngest was 8 years old. I mean, you see things, and I'm like, I've lived, I work in the Bed-Stuy, right? I'm used to kids with guns and orientation and slashing, box cutters slashing across the face. I'm more scared here. It was so scary in 2007, the police station in Chow Kit moved out. It was like, in the newspaper saying, oh, the police moved out of Chow Kit because it's too dangerous. I'm like, wait a second. It's too dangerous for the police, but it's okay for the children. That is what we're talking about. I had a revolving door system, open carte blanche with the Ministry of Women, who was back here where Bang Negara was, every week with a list of names of children there were violations and stuff. I would go see James Nayagam because I'm not an NGO, yeah. I am still a volunteer program at the Yayasan Salam and saying, please help me. I don't know anything about child rights, but I know what's wrong, yeah. you're not supposed to sell your children. I go to the police, I would make reports, police said, where does it say you can't sell your children? Because there's no anti-trafficking law. I'm sitting here like, what? And I'm calling lawyers and saying, the police is saying there's no law to say you can't sell your children. He says, use the penal code. He says, where in the penal code? I mean, this is me with my broken Malay, right? The first word I learned from the children was lanta, because I just don't know what else to do, right? So the kids would tell me, lanta lah. And I said, oh my God, I can't do lanta, right? I cannot do nothing. I need to do something, right? We opened April 1st, 2007. By December 2007, I had 66 cases of child abuse, which involves 100-something children. Almost all had no papers. 14 cases of baby selling. People selling their babies, having to get back. I was writing letters or asking people to help me translate, write little letters to give out to mothers to say, please don't sell your baby, don't kill your baby, don't just bring me, I don't answer any questions, don't sell, don't sell. I was doing that. I would sit downstairs in the stall that's still there every day, just waiting to meet mothers and stuff with cuts in their faces who were sex workers, whose children were pimping the mothers. Every day. I had funny stories. I've sad stories. I've lost children, entire groups of children, siblings, to the system because they have nothing for them, because no papers, right? I didn't have a shelter. I couldn't put the children in here because the parents were banging on the door, which is why I have a gate and a security guard and CCTVs, because parents would be chasing the kids up the stairs and they would be hiding behind me and the parents would be coming at me. This is how it was. So I have many stories, stories that broke my heart. I have 2 safe houses, one in PJ, one here, because I will never lose a child to the system anymore. The part of the reason I lost those siblings and Zayed's own biological sister who was older was because I didn't have a safe house and the parents were coming and they were going to sell the children. So the JKM said, you can't keep them. You can't protect them here. You cannot hold them. I had police escorts for 2 weeks with death threats. I had syndicates and stuff. When I started taking more children in, I started with 40 kids. By December 2007, we had 198. We had problems with bullying because we had old kids, with young kids, with what kids. We had to ask and beg. It took me 3 years to get the ministry to agree to open KL Crash Pad, which is on Tugut Rahman. It took me the same amount of time to have the kindergarten in the nursery, which I lost because we were not registered. We didn't have tax exemption. The sponsor wanted tax exemption. It was under Salam, and Salam took it from us because they could, because it's legally theirs, right? We're not an NGO. I put on 80 pounds since 2007. I haven't lost it. I was just stress eating because for every kid that I lost, I did get some back because I fought. So I fought to get kids back. We had 4 kids, babies who were about to get sold, right, in Johor, that we managed to get out. 3 of them, they were all 1 year old, yeah, 1 year olds. 3 of the kids we found the biological parent. 1 of the kids we didn't. That kid is now in Epsom on scholarship. Like freaking top student. He's about to be top student for this year. And he's been adopted and stuff. But blood, sweat and tears, it's going to come out again, having to pay for his school fees. He's got half a scholarship. It's still $72,000 that I have to help raise. But he's worth my blood, sweat and tears because you know what? He's doing well and he wants to study actual science. This little kid from Ulu Tiram. Incredible stories, right? I had to fight court, yeah? JKM, who took them in the middle of the night, 4 boys, for 4 months to get them back out. Then I had to fight the doctor who tried to sell them, and I had to win that one. Then I had to, and then we had to find a detective to find the parents of these children. We couldn't find Sean's. So I have wins. We have wins. We win.
That's what makes it possible to keep going.
Because kids like that that proves my point that every child, deserves the best kind of care ever, whatever I can give. And they deserve every bit of my time and effort. Every kid. Well, the food pandemic the food, please, over the pandemic was terrible. So, I keep that on my phone, right? The 5,387 blocked numbers over the time after you help them 4 or 5 times. My phone, I've never seen anything like my phone. I would get 300 food pleas a day, not just on WhatsApp, yeah? So it'd be text messages, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. When I was asked to be on the National Recovery Council, the first day I said, I want food. I want emergency food that people are hungry, right? And I just took my phone, and because it wasn't this thing was online, I just put my phone on the screen and I said, please look at my text messages. And there were 267 food, please. I said, that's just my text messages. I couldn't even respond to private messages because my phone was just banked. So a friend had to get me another phone so that I could call like my kids to find out whatever, right? Or my mother, or because my phone was just gone. Everybody had my phone number. My phone number is on every single Facebook kampong in Sabah. People, everybody was calling, scammers included, but everybody was calling me, right? That for me was eye-opening. Having to coordinate with focal people in kampongs in Sabah when I'm in KL and watch on video, the food things, how to get the food from the kedai runcit in Sabah, because you can't. These places, some of them have no roads, right? So to get them on trolleys, and the kampong helping you to get the food distribution video, yeah, live. I had that, but I also watched babies die in front of me because they couldn't get to the hospital. Mothers who die in front of me, and I'm sitting there, and like there was one where it was twins, yeah, both died because they couldn't get to the hospital. Sabah was terrible for me, terrible. And that they saw me on some YouTube and decided to call me, right? And that was when I think I found the strength to say, when I got on the National Recovery Council, which I'm sure, they're all regretting till now that they got me on the council, saying, I need all the, and so, I was doing consulting for Malaysian Red Crescent. So at Malaysian Red Crescent, Yayasan Chow Kit, Mercy, we had all the 6 top NGOs like going around distributing. I'm like, give me money. And I said, and then JKM was like, we have given out bantuan makanan, 3.2 billion ringgit. I'm like, doing what? Once? I'm like, there's a pandemic going on for 2.5 years. What have you given them? So I'm like, what is your definition of helping? For me, what drove this point home was really profound, which was poverty is not about money or the lack of money. Poverty is robbing a person of the dignity to take care of his own family. I had fathers cry on the phone. I had mothers cry on the phone. I had children calling me, crying, saying, my mama has no food. And I just thought, oh my God. And we're still suffering here. We still have this problem. Which is why I cannot let go of food security. I have nothing to do with food security. I don't do food security. I do child protection. But if you have no food, your child is sick. Your child can't go to school. School is a privilege now, not a priority. It cannot. People don't have jobs. Children won't think about schools because they have to work. They're sick and they're hungry. I still have videos of crying babies till now. Child protection has to be a priority in this country. I wrote something yesterday that came out in Malaysia Kini about we don't make. Look, I do have a one-track mind, right? My one-track mind is children. But really, I just don't understand how you can talk about the economy and climate change and health and everything else when you don't make children front and center. Because why are you improving health and education and climate change when there will be no healthy child in this society to protect? Because we don't give a shit. You don't protect children. You don't protect the future. You don't protect children. You are saying, this is who we are as a society and these are our values. We don't care. And you know what? We used to care. So I don't understand this rubbish.